On the 3rd of April, Sunshine Coast Mayors Mark Jemison and Moreton Bay Mayor Alan Sutherland met with the Honourable Jeff Seeney, Minister for State Development, Infrastructure and Planning. The meeting was called as a result of a standoff between Sunshine Coast Council and the state government about an area known as Halls Creek. Sunshine Coast Council had asked the Minister to approve its new planning scheme, which did not include the Halls Creek area. The Minister insisted that Sunshine Coast Council included the Halls Creek area in its planning scheme, as it is identified in the SEQ Regional Plan as an Identified Gross Area, or IGA, and the planning scheme must comply with the Regional Plan. Sunshine Coast Council argued that it did comply with the SEQ Regional Plan as it had included another area, known as the Biawak-Caloundra South Corridor, for its possible future development. The SEQ Regional Plan states that additional lands in the Caloundra South Halls Creek and Biawak-Caloundra South Corridor are designated as Identified Gross Areas. Further investigations are required to determine which of these IGAs will be seriously considered to accommodate long-term residential and employment growth on the Sunshine Coast. Minister Seeney agreed that the suitability of both sites should be investigated and instructed the Honourable Mark McArdle, Member for Caloundra, and the Honourable Andrew Powell, Member for Glasshouse, to lead a community consultation process about the issue. He further agreed that the outcome of this process would determine which of these two IGAs will remain in the new SEQ Regional Plan, due out later this year, and will remain in the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme. The two identified gross areas are located on the southern end of the Sunshine Coast. There are no formal boundaries for either of the areas, just dots on a map that provide an approximate location. Halls Creek is an area of around 3,200 hectares, located between the Palmerston Passage and the Bruce Highway south of the Pelican Waters. The Biawak-Caloundra South Corridor is an area of around 5,200 hectares, located to the west of the Bruce Highway, between Royce Road and Steve Irwin Way. There are several reasons why Council opposes the Halls Creek IGA. One reason is to protect the interurban break, the area of green space between Moreton Bay and the Sunshine Coast. Without the interurban break, the Sunshine Coast would become part of Noosa Gata, an uninterrupted strip of urban development stretching from Noosa in the north to Coolangatta in the south. Around the year 2000, the interurban break extended for 31 kilometers from the Palmerston Road in Moreton Bay to Caloundra Road on the Sunshine Coast. By 2014, this had reduced to 20 kilometers between Limber Creek in the south and Bells Creek Road in the north. A second key consideration is the impact development will have on the Palmerston Passage. The passage is a unique waterway that has very significant environmental, social and economic values. It gives the existing community of Caloundra its character and amenity. It provides an important space for recreation and underpins the tourism industry that supports hundreds of local jobs. The passage is recognized internationally as a significant wetland, providing habitat for turtles, dugongs, dolphins and over 200 bird species, including more than 50 that are protected under national and international legislation. All these values are dependent upon the water quality in the Palmerston Passage. If water quality goes down, so will the natural systems that depend upon it and the community amenity associated with it. Over the past 10 years, water quality in the passage has been getting a C grade with a gradual downward trend. In the future, pressures on the passage will increase as the Caloundra South community is developed and an additional 50,000 people move into the catchment. And there are other issues to be considered. How will these developments relate to existing communities at Caloundra, Biawak and Landsborough? How will they connect to existing infrastructures such as road, hospitals or even a future railway? So what do we really know about these sites? Halls Creek borders on the Palmerston Passage on one side and the Bruce Highway on the other. The area is largely freehold land. Stockland is the largest single landholder and owns a 1,400 hectare parcel in the centre of the IGA. It also owns most of the land to the north, which is the future community of Caloundra South, for which it has already received planning and environmental approvals from the state and federal government. Halls Creek sits within the Palmerston catchment and drains through the Halls Creek and Cushing Creek subcatchments into the Palmerston Passage. The area is low-lying, between 2 and 20 meters above the high tide mark. About 40% of the area is flood-prone. Halls Creek contains important wetlands and is adjacent to a national park. The Halls Creek area was first considered for urban development around the year 2000, when Landsworth purchased the land holdings now owned by Stockland. Since then it has been considered for the Caloundra City Plan, the Caloundra Growth Management Strategy, and most recently the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme. Throughout these processes, the community has consistently rejected the possibility of urban development in the area. The Beerwah Caloundra South Corridor is an area between the Bruce Highway, Steve Irwin Way and Royce Road. It is between 9 and 15 kilometers from the edge of the Palmerston Passage and is between 20 and 70 meters above the high tide mark. The area is largely state-owned and is leased to HQ Plantations for forestry purposes under a 99-year lease. The estate represents around 10% of the forestry estate in the region, which supports the jobs of around 300 people. There is also a considerable amount of freehold land within this area. Like Halls Creek, the Beerwah Corridor largely sits within the Palmerston catchments, draining to the Palmerston Passage through Bells Creek and Melham-Cushing Creek subcatchments. The northern area of the site is part of the Mooloolah River catchment and drains towards Ewan-Maddock Dam. The area contains a national park, significant areas of remnant vegetation, and a number of smaller wetlands. The Beerwah Corridor area has not previously been considered for urban development. The standoff over Halls Creek raises important questions for all coast residents. What do we value about our region? How can we best preserve this for future generations? How can we manage a growing population without losing the things that make this region a great place to live? Is the southern end of the coast the best place for future development? Should we be looking towards urban renewal and higher density rather than further urban sprawl? Fortunately, there is no rush to make these decisions. The planning scheme provides enough developable land to manage growth for the next 30 years and beyond. By that time, the coast will be a very different place. Our population will have grown by 130,000 people to more than 400,000. New town centres will have been built at Kawana, Sippy Downs and Maroochydore. New communities will have been developed at Palmview and Caloundra South. How we manage growth after that is an important question that affects us all. If you want to contribute to this discussion or simply want to learn more about the Halls Creek and Beerwah Caloundra South Corridor sites, then join Mayor Mark Jemison and local members Mark McArdle and Andrew Powell at the Halls Creek Community Forum on the 3rd of July from 7 p.m. at the CCSA Hall in Caloundra.